it's written at a 5th grade level. Please read it. Please understand what's going on. The legal system, when a tragedy befalls somebody or your family, what are your rights? You know, should you get a lawyer right away or should you not? If you tell somebody that just go to a doctor and just visit him in the emergency room, you'll say, oh, that's not right. You know, I should go to a doctor, have a regular checkup. I should know a little bit about my health, you know, what keeps me healthy, what doesn't keep me healthy. Same thing with a lawyer and the legal system. Get to know somebody, please, and then get to know your rights. I have a short quiz for somebody, for people here. I just want to see what kind of a legal background that we all have. So if somebody pulls you over at a traffic light, and the police officer says, I want to search your car, what should be the answer? No?
I would say yes, because he's going to get a warrant, and he's going to put me in handcuff, and he's going to search the car anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. So you said no, and then you said you would agree?
Yes. So he's going to search the car regardless. So I have a choice if I have him search the car, or I actually have a handcuff put on me and then have him search it. So.
Okay. Actually, that's a very valid point, and I'm sure it has happened. Fortunately for us, now every police car is equipped with a video camera, and the law requires that they park behind you and everything is done in the front. So unless he has a good reason to believe, unless he can find something that's in plain view, he cannot search his car. If he does search your car, anything he finds, it can't be used against you. So the correct answer is you're right, no. And I guess your answer is politically correct. Another thing, can they actually, if they suspect some activity, can they actually bring an animal like a dog and have him go around if they think that you've got some weapons or some thing in your car that's not right? Can they have a dog sniff your car? Can you refuse that?
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't think so, because that's security thing, right?
Right, you cannot refuse that, because what they'll do is they'll tell you to come and sit in the car, and while they get the dogs, and they'll start sniffing out. So it's very minor things that if you know how to respond and what is right and what is wrong, it will help you down the road. There's something called a statute of limitations. I'd like you all to Google that. Statute of limitations means that there is a limit in the number of years that you can go after somebody. So even if you're a victim of a crime and the police didn't do their job right, or somebody actually you think is very, very biased against you and is trying to find evidence against you, you have a certain number of years to go after them once you find out. If you don't, it's barred for the rest of your life. Okay? So those are some of the issues that I think as Muslims we really need to focus on and learn. Yes, Rob?
In your second question, let's say if the dog suspects something around your car and give reason for a police officer to look into it, is he allowed to search them?
Right, he is. Because now he has probable cause. Because the dog barking means that the dog is trained, the court recognizes the training of a dog, and then he can now go ahead and proceed and search.
Even if it's false?
Even if it's false. And if nothing comes out, nothing comes out. It's not really applicable here, but in a lot of cultures, and especially when students come here, there's one car and 5 people are sharing it. They're going to work. I know in New York there's a lot of taxis where one person goes in the morning, one person goes in the evening. It's not even your car. But all of a sudden if something is found in it, some weapon, even if it's a knife, they can consider it a weapon. And then because the car was in your possession, they can go ahead and arrest you and book you for it. So refusing the police or the FBI is not a crime. But then if they find something, it's going to be very, very difficult to pursue that. Okay. You know, that's a valid criticism, and that may happen. Usually when you go to a court of law, let's say that he did end up searching you. You said no, he searched you anyway, okay? you really have to use the legal system at that time, including the video evidence, your own testimony, if there's somebody else in the car that will testify. And that's why, if you notice, a lot of police officers, when they suspect something, they always call for a backup, because they know that now it's their word against your word. So 2 police cars will come out there. At the end of the day, it's, who the jury believes. In this particular case, the evidence was quite clear. There was a person who died. There were 3 people. There was weapons found, because the person was severely beaten. All the evidence is there, but who does the jury believe? Do they believe that they did it or they did not do it? So at the end of the day, you're so correct. It all comes down to credibility and the jury system as to who they actually go out and believe. But just because we think that it's going to happen, I think we all just need to learn that we need to stand up for our rights. And there will be injustice. 4 or 5 of us will have to pay that price. Like I said, that brother from Jordan, the PhD student, he wanted to stay in jail. He was going to stay in jail for up to 5 years, because it takes 5 years sometimes to call to the Supreme Court. He wanted to fight his case. But at the end of 6 months, he said, you know what, I'll take a deportation because my family can't wait that long. So somebody has to kind of stand up and say, no, I will not let you search this car. Or, no, you cannot come into my house. I'll give you an example. A friend of mine works at a mall, got arrested. Not got arrested. The FBI came to him and said, we'd like to talk to you. And, of course, he didn't say no. He said, sure. And what they did was they showed him my picture. And they said, do you know this guy? He says, yes. And they said, well, we've heard that this guy sells fake IDs. What's your opinion on that? He says, I haven't heard for it. Then they went to another person who wasn't related to me or my friend and said, showed my picture again and said, eventually they're going to find somebody who's going to say, well, yeah, maybe I heard something. So they're going out there and they're fishing, and then, yes, if you've heard something, that's enough to come in and arrest me and then proceed on. But, if it didn't happen, then we just need to stick to the truth, inshallah.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on this injustice that was done with Imran Khan?
Sure. And brother Aga, correct me if I don't get the details right. Like I said, since I've only been involved for the last few months, it all boils down to the bottom line is beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's a very, very high standard. That means that there's no doubt left in your mind. The very first time, there was some evidence that was excluded. And again, the justice system says that, if some evidence wasn't properly gathered, wasn't collected right, or you violated somebody's rights, that evidence stays out. So some evidence stayed out, and of course the jury came back and said that, he wasn't guilty. The second time around, that evidence was allowed in. Still, what they did was they pointed all the blame. So there were 2 people who were very close physically close at the location of the crime. Both people were initially charged. Now, Texas has a system called a grand jury indictment. Anybody know how that system works? What a grand jury indictment is? Okay. So let's say I'm accused of a crime. Okay. A prosecutor just can't go out and say, Bilal did a crime, let's press charges against him. What they do is they take the evidence and they go to another jury, a group of people, and say, this is the evidence that we have. What do you think? Should he be charged with the crime, yes or no? So in Farhan Khan's case, there were 2 people who were accused. The jury came back and said, this is not a trial. This is just like a jury that says, is there any possibility he could have done the crime? If there's any possibility, the case goes on. The grand jury came back and said, one person, there's no possibility he could have been the killer. So he was let go totally free. Only the other person, they said, well, we think there must be something, he may have done this crime, let's proceed the case against him. So when finally the case came to trial, there was only one person that was accused. And what they did was they put the blame on the person that the grand jury let go. Right? And because the grand jury said that there was no possibility they could have committed a crime, we couldn't go back. The justice system can't go back and accuse that first person. And so both people were let go.
So there is no higher court where you can challenge them?
In a criminal case, if a jury says that it's dismissed and there's not enough reason, the government cannot appeal. But if somebody was accused and they were convicted, that person can appeal. So unfortunately, the system is very biased towards the accused.
Brother Bilal, may I say a few words here?
Yes, please.
I think another thing is that the DA holds a lot of power on which cases to prosecute. I mean, remember we had a petition going on asking people to sign that petition and ask the DA to charge that other person. There was a third person who was involved, but since the DA had lost that first trial, he didn't want to take the chance and do it again. So the DA has a lot of discretion on which cases to prosecute, unfortunately. And we've been trying to push him to charge the other person, but that didn't happen. And also, I think one of the perpetrators was a police informant, so they didn't want to charge him with anything.
He was working for a drug deal with I think it's called partiality.
So, Brother Bilal, in your mind, or in your opinion, in hindsight, what could have been done right if this was to be brought one more time?
I think there could have been a lot more thorough investigation in every aspect. And we've visited about that. Unfortunately, the time for that has passed a little bit. But there could have been a lot more thorough investigation from the police. There could have been better detective work. And then something just, if there's one person who died, and there were two people present there, and there is a instrument that was the cause of the death, I mean, it's common sense, right? Unfortunately, the case wasn't presented in such a fashion that the jury was convinced. Some people would say that the police was biased. There was an informant. I think that's a possibility. That's a very big possibility. You'd be surprised at how much bias there is in the justice system against Muslims, because we deal with it every single day. There's not a single day where we don't get a call where a Muslim's children have been taken away, for whatever reason. And if you look at the accusations, they're just totally out. But the bias is there. Brother Ava, do you want to comment on what could have been done differently on that?
No, I think what you said was better police work and better detective work. That would have helped.
Right.
Gathering of evidence and presentation by the prosecutor.
Right. And unfortunately, so much is not in our control. The police are not in control. We can't hire a lawyer and say he will prosecute it. These are government lawyers. These are paid lawyers, And will they do their best they can? I mean, they're supposed to, but will they? We don't know. We had one final meeting with them, and they had just, said, there's nothing else we can do. It was a very kind of sad attitude, but they said there's nothing else we can do. Even if there was, they weren't willing to do. The will wasn't there.
But you can ask for a replacement of a DA, right? I mean, if you as the parent are not satisfied with the DA's work, you can ask the judge to replace him. Is it possible legally?
Yeah, we requested the assistant DA to replace the prosecutor after the first trial. We requested several times, but he said that since she is aware of the case, she has prosecuted the case before, so we're not going to do that.
So the judge did not.
Not the judge, her boss.
Okay.
Cynthia Walker was the prosecutor, and then her boss was the first assistant DA, so we requested him that if the case should be given second time to somebody else who can have a better presentation of the case for the trial, but we were not granted. So you're right, absolutely right, yeah, but we tried that and that it was not given a chance.
That's sad.
I'd like to say that there is an inherent weakness in all murder trials. I remember the O.J. Simpson trial. It was a very high-profile trial, and one of the different prosecuting lawyers said that in murder cases, the defense lawyer doesn't have to prove that his client is innocent.
Correct.
All he has to do is to plant some doubt in the mind of the jurors that there, this thing may, there's something fishy about it, or there's something uncertain about the evidence produced. That's it. Because that's what, beyond the shadow of a doubt, rather than the preponderance of the doubt. So that's where the problem comes. All they do is that there is some doubt that this man has done it, and that's all it takes. It's unfortunate. It's the reality.
Right. To add to that comment, brother, about changing and replacing, you have to show very clear evidence of a bias based on the protected grounds, that he's biased based on your race, religion, ethnicity, gender, something like that. Otherwise, it's very hard to replace a judge or a DA. So now you can always go into civil court. The brother mentioned the O.J. Simpson. You go to civil court, it's a much lower standard. The civil courts have a standard that, more than 50% chance that he did it, then that person is there. But there's no criminal consequences for that, of course.
Does media play a role in these things, in highlighting the case properly and pushing it properly? Because I've seen a lot of times what happens is, if the case is highlighted beyond the proportions, then the pressure is on the state or the system to take it otherwise. Somebody is basically watching. So does it make a difference that if Muslims are in that field as well, and they're able to push that harder to bring out the reality, bring out the case in detail? Because if you hear on CNN anything, everybody in the world knows about it. But there's no representation for cases like this in the state media or anywhere.
That's actually very true. It's called trial by the media, because there'll be so much information, the cameras in the courtrooms. Sometimes the judges put what they call a gag order, that you can't say anything, but still information leaves. That reminds me, Brother Nihad, who heads CAIR. I was listening to him in a presentation, and he said something very, 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 very to the point. He said that he once talked to an NPR host. An NPR is supposed to be a radio station that is not very biased. And he said that I was listening to your comments, and it was about Israel and Palestinian conflict. And he said that I felt that there was an Israeli bias in there. And that's not NPR. NPR usually tries to be very fair. Why was that? You know what the host said? He said that when I was doing that program, I got more than 100 calls from Jews right there, and putting pressure on me that do this, say this, present this, and do that. And he said he did not get a single Muslim call on the media, because Muslims either weren't listening, or they're not in the media, or frankly, it's not important to them. So he said that at some point, I'm a human being. I get 100 calls from them. That's how my opinion is going to be shaped. So that's why the petition drive was there. So we did try to put all the pressure that was possible to go out there and have them do the right thing. But I think it's a responsibility of the whole community to come forward on occasions like that. And even when there's not an occasion like that, if it's an injustice to a non-Muslim, injustice to a minority, we have to go and make those phone calls. Yeah, that's a very valid point.
What was the cause for the murder? Why it happened? Just because he was Muslim, or what was the reason?
Brother, you want to?
I think there was a reason was that he looked different. He was playing bowling in one area of his section. They were playing basketball on their court. There were 3 basketballs, so there was no that he had was taking their space. They picked on him. They were three. He looked different. He was playing a different game. They couple of times intimidated him, pressured him, and it just resulted in a physical altercation, and they stabbed him. So that was and it could be a hate crime. We even went to FBI for that, but they said, the Frisco office, and they said that we have to prove that somebody heard some slurs. They did made some slurs, "You Afghani, what are you doing here?" And they testified to that fact in the court themselves. And so it could be, it was a hate crime. Definitely, there's no doubt about it.
Did you ever get an apology or anything from the
No. No.
What did they, in their defense, what did they say it was self-defense or?
Well, the guy who was accused was putting pressure, was putting the blame on the other guy who was not charged. And that's what happened. Like brother mentioned, that is the one who was not accused, the one who was accused was trying to put the blame on the other one, that he did it, not me. So they created doubt in the mind of the jury.
And the ethnicity of the other two?
One was, the accused was a Caucasian male, and the other one was Hispanic. Thank you.
One more question for Brother Bilal. What role federal government play in this kind of cases? Do they have any role, federal government, or?
So criminal cases under local jurisdiction. So the county gets involved. If there's a federal law against something like the brother mentioned, hate crime, then the federal government can get involved. If there was a gun involved, sometimes they try to get involved because there's a federal law on guns. That actually brings up a good point, that what is a hate crime? You know, can somebody here, do we know the definition of a hate crime?
It's a crime where somebody hates somebody and they want to kill them. And so they...
Very good. Excellent. So it's a crime, it's an act of violence that's based on something that's protected by the government. Yes?
Basically, it's like a crime that like where you put violence towards someone who's like different than you are by ethnicity and gender.
Okay, excellent. Very good. So it's based on the protected grounds, and I keep saying the word protected is because if somebody's going to hurt me because they don't like the shirt I'm wearing, I can't, if he says, I don't like the blue shirt and then he shoots me, that cannot be a hate crime. It has to be something that's protected, race, religion, ethnicity, gender, and things of those sort. The problem with hate crime is that you have to actually prove that something racially or protected was first said. So if somebody puts something on my door saying, go home because you are not from here, and the next day he comes and hurts me, now it's a hate crime because there's some evidence that the violence was based on that. Unfortunately, in a murder situation, there is no proof that, what really happened. That's why the FBI refused to get involved. Jazakallah khair.
So, brothers, as you know that inshallah we will continue to stay here for a while, and some food also has been arranged.
So, can I say a few?
Yes, Sister Amina, I was going to invite you as a matter of fact. So, for all this discussion, you can continue while we will be having the food, and you can ask other questions. Yes. But I'm going to invite Sister Amina Rab, who is the chairperson for the CAIR organization of Dallas chapter. So we welcome her over here, and also she is inshallah going to address us.
Thank you so much. I wanted to thank the Frisco community for inviting us and giving us the opportunity to come